We say bring your business, but here's how we're talking about it today. And we're going to ask the scenarios. Scott is coming. He's working on his scenario, he told me. But we're all going to have one. It helps if you do. The more relevant you make what's going on in your life to this, the better. But why might some people feel that a high standard and grace, which in essence is love and forgiveness wrapped up, but compassion, are opposed to each other at work? How come we feel like that high standards and grace can be opposed to each other? And why might we feel that way? Why do you think that is? You mean so it's easier to just say, why aren't you hitting the standard?
Yeah, for sure.
Than to say, why aren't you hitting the standard?
Yeah.
And how can I help?
Yeah.
Right.
Especially the second part, how can I help?
Yeah. That opens everything up.
I think with grace,
If you mean it, you can say it and not mean it too, right? Go ahead. Yeah, that's honest though, right? I'm trying to achieve this. You could be in my way. I'm going to move forward, right? That plays out. Or let's ask a few more questions, right? Who has business goals in here? Anybody got a goal? Organizational goals? If you're a nonprofit, that's fine. Who has organizational goals? Who has kingdom goals? Now, all of your kingdom goals are not business goals. But have you synced up all your business or organizational goals to the kingdom? If your mission in a nonprofit is that way, hopefully. And I know yours are, so we're going to let the nonprofit take a pass on this one, but we're going to hit them hard in a minute. Don't worry. What business are they separate or combined? Your business and kingdom goals. You have separate goals. You have different people you're loving, and work's one of them. But we got to sync a kingdom, business and kingdom. He's saying, so think about that. It's another. We're raising the tension so far. We haven't solved anything, have we, Michael? We're raising the tension. Is it easier to maintain high standards at work than it is to generally dispense grace? Which is easier for you? You can have different answers on this. Is it easier to hold the standards? You basically were answering that question a little bit. But is it easier to hold the standards or to dispense grace? Which is easier for you?
Myself.
Who thinks that? It's easiest to hold other people to standards. Who thinks that way? Yeah. But hilariously, the last group was more what Matthew's saying. It's easier just to let it go. But is that love? Easier to not say anything. But is that love? So we got this thing about standards, right? We said business runs on standards, or organizations run on standards. Nonprofits run certain standards. Even your fundraisers want to know your standards, and yet it's all run. All the work is done by people, and people run on love and forgiveness. One of the things that keeps people from working is to be in trauma or in fixation that they're not forgiven, that they don't know that the grace has been extended to them. It pulls back creativity. It pulls back initiative when you don't know it. So these things work together. We're going to see that in a minute. So we talked about who sets goals. Who delivers on promises? I really like to deliver. Who's big on that? I deliver. If you keep lowering your goals, it's easier. But so, again, we've learned this lesson before, just to cover off on that second, the big difference in contentment and complacency. There's stuff wrong in the world, and we're supposed to move into it. What Miss Kuntz did was she moved into it. She knew she was so covered. She didn't react. There was somebody in here that knows that, what she was doing before, and what she said to the person when she got up from her desk. But she didn't know what faced her. She didn't. But she moved toward it because she knew who she was. And the testimony out there, even on CNN, is that how she loved people dramatically. And so she knew it's time. There's something wrong in this place. I'm moving toward it. So deliver out there, because she, in a sense, make a promise to keep students safe. So I'm going to do it. I think we'll find that custodian, same thing. He moved toward it. So think about that. How did Jesus accomplish his goal? So this is the key. I'm going to back up just a second. Every leadership attribute that you need to be better at, that you want to be better, every character attribute, every leadership thing, everything, Jesus is the preeminent example. He is the prime example. He completes it the best. If he isn't, you don't need it. But if you think about everything you are trying to strive to get better at, he is the preeminent example. He accomplished excellence. He is the definition of excellence. We're going to prove that in a second. And the definition of grace. So I want you to, as we think about that, I'm going to stop one more second and get your scenario where this is the hardest for you. Let's get them on the table. Let's get 2 or 3 more. Where living out high excellence and or dispensing grace freely is the biggest struggle. So sometimes it's, you know it, but it's just a time to get time to realize it. What's the right thing to do in this scenario? Good. And both of you guys are kind of saying something very similar in that corner there about easier to be tough on others, but think consistently. If you're tough on others, you're tough on yourself, most likely. It starts by not by not believing the promises of Jesus for your own self, and then you push that off on somebody else who when they're having a worse day is harder on other people. Yeah, me for sure. I'm the chief sinner there. And so same, if I let standards off, I might tend to let other people off the hook. I let myself off the hook, and I might be lowering the standard to something that's not great. It can help. Both ways can happen. The one I'm due to myself, I probably, in stress, especially do to others. Probably. So think about that. Now, how did Jesus, in excellence, did he come and lower the standard? No. Raised it. Did he remove grace? Here's the definition of it. Matthew, read this. And worth reading again. You read perfectly. I'm going to read it again. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. The very God walked around. The Old Testament walked around. The Word who spoke creation into existence walked around. We've seen his glory. That we all seek glory. A great book by Randy Pope called The Answer. We all seek glory, but we seek it temporarily for these little things. Well, part of the things that somebody else's standard get in the way of your glory. Bonuses, satisfaction, numbers. So part of that's glory. We all seek glory, but he's the definition of glory, and glory is defined as grace and truth. Truth is to a standard. Truth is to a standard, and it's full of grace. It's ever dispensing grace, and actually the truth leads us to grace. But if he's defined as anything, this verse unlocks the entire Bible, by the way. And if those of you have a Bible that you can drill in, or a great study Bible, you can probably get to the whole Bible from this verse if you just keep going to the clicks. It unlocks the whole thing. Maybe combined with John 1:1-4. But grace and truth, did he abolish the Old Testament law, some 661 laws, I think, like that. Does anybody know the exact number? It's a free salad for a month if you have the number today. I meant to look it up every single lesson. Now we're at the end of the week. But it's 600 or 700 individual laws that were created in the Torah. And so now he came and simplified them in one sense. Love your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbors yourself. Oh, wait a minute. That was said in Deuteronomy 2, so it was simple before all the other little laws. It was simple. We had to get it complicated because we didn't follow it. But he brings it down to grace and truth. But did he lower the standard? Where did he lower the standard somewhere? The most graceful existence in the world, did he lower the standard or raise it?
Yeah, he really lowered it. Because you're talking about like just to receive salvation. The standard of excellence that we want to achieve.
You mean as to the law? You raised it. You made it clear everybody can meet it, right? The Pharisees called, I do all these 661 things.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. I didn't know what you were asking.
Yeah.
It took away you to earn it. So to me, that would almost be lowering the standards when you go, you don't have to earn it. So that's it.
You can't earn it. So
right.
And that's where we got to separate it.
Right.
We're going to see that. He paid for it, but he didn't lower it. What did he say about adultery?
Don't do it.
Yeah. He said, you say don't, good, don't do it. Do you commit adultery? You say don't commit adultery. I say if you even lust after a man or a woman, you've committed adultery. You say don't murder. I say if you're angry with somebody, you're murdering. You say, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. He raises the standard. It's raised completely, and then he moves into it full of grace and mercy. And let's just prove it a little further. We're going to read these faster. Elisha, you read these. I forgot this point. He is a worker. I'll read this. He is a worker. At his core, he's a worker. His Father's a worker. Listen to Eugene Peterson just giving us wisdom. 27 times in John's Gospel, Jesus is identified as a worker. My Father is still working, and also I am working. Work doesn't take us away from God. It continues the work of God. We observe that God comes into view on the very first page of our Scripture as a worker, creating the universe. 5 days, it was good. It was good. It was good. It was good. It made man and woman. It was very good. Once we identify God in the workplace working, it isn't long before we find ourselves in our workplace working in the name of God. We pray in the name of Jesus, but Colossians 3:17 says we do everything in the name of Jesus. The way He did it, full of grace and truth, we're called to do it exactly the same. All of our work, full of the ultimate high standard, full of grace. And we're going to keep solving the scenario. Now, Elisha, read just if we're unclear that He's excellent and full of grace. Let's keep going, and we're just backing up that point real quick. Created everything. You can see it, He created it. If you can't see it, He created it. Or somebody He created made it. Everything on earth, heaven, even things you can't see, spirits, things that became evil. He created everything by the Word. He created it. All things have been created. And why is this here? Why does this exist? For Him. It's created through Him. It's made for Him. Why is this going? It's for Him. Keep going, Willie. Supremacy. And the ESV says preeminent. In everything that He might be preeminent. There's nothing that's good, there's nothing that exists that He isn't the head of. There's nothing. He's above all of it. Okay? So the why. But He came to do what? So He made everything. Everything's for the purpose of Him. He's supreme in all things, all leadership attributes, everything. If it exists to honor and glorify Him. And then He condescended Himself and came down. He the very fullness of God. He was the exact radiance of God. And He came down to reconcile the world to Himself. He came. So in all that supremacy, the ultimate supreme act is to bring us close to God. To bring everybody to Himself. To make you one with Him. That's it. And then He says, go and do likewise. Is it bringing? It takes high standards and complete grace to come together. To come together. It all comes together. All that supremacy, all that excellence, all that high standard. Nobody's better than it. And then the very purpose of all of it is to unite everything in Jesus, which is full of grace. So it's put together. How has the excellent, grace-filled work of Christ impacted your life? It's a personal question. It's different for everybody. It has a similar bottom line. How has it impacted you? It's good. So in cleaning up the previous point, he shouldn't say, because of the fall, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. People are going to get sick, and it's not because of their sin. It's because of the fall. Things are going to happen. So there's something that fall that we say, that's because of the fall. But we say, I just really had a good day. Don't worry about it. He doesn't say that. He does say, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I've got you. I've got you in the middle of that sin. It's paid for. It's done. I'm not lowering the standard. I'm paying for the standard. I got it. It cost Him something. What was the benefit to you? Oh, wait a minute. You're saying the high excellence and grace-filled work of Christ changes your purpose for everything. Changes how you view it. Okay, so wait a minute. And you got to the big answer earlier. The big answer is you're given what?
Grace.
Grace. You're given, and you meant salvation. You've got it. So it changes the detail. It changes the day. I'm covered. I'm completely covered. It reads like this, good Presbyterian. You read it. Nothing is more biblical in a sense. It's by grace you've been saved through faith. And it's not a blasé faith. It's a faith in a person, in an act, in a death, and a resurrection that paid for everything. It's done. It's finished. It's not. We didn't. By the way, we didn't lose a little. That's another thing about that book answer. We didn't lose a little, and we get some back. We lost it all. And whether Adam and Eve had done it or not, we've lost it all this morning. I've lost it all somewhere in this lesson. You know, even just leading this group, I have sinned. Right now, I can't name it, or I would confess it. But I have lost it all this morning for sure. But I've gotten it all back. So, it isn't that we the lie we believe in this. All these false dichotomies line up, by the way, to produce the end result that we're going to get to in the next 25 minutes. But the first one is that my life is separate in faith and work. It's separate. I got my faith and I got my work, and I really don't want to mix those things. It's all spiritual. Every moment, whether we realize it or not, this moment is spiritual. Whether we realize it or not, everything I face, this is a spiritual moment. Going through this, hanging out with my buddies, being at work, wherever I am, it's all spiritual. And it's all, and we, in that spiritual, we've all fallen. Every one of us, at work, at home, in all parts of our lives, we've fallen, and He has paid for it all, 100%, and not of ourselves. We did nothing. We didn't kind of earn it back. We weren't graded on a curve. You know, I'm better than that guy. We're not. We're not better than the shooter. That's an explosive thing to say right now, but we're not better. We deserve the same. And so, it's not from ourselves. It's the gift of God. It's totally done. It's totally paid for. Not by works. I did nothing that no one can boast. There's nothing I did to earn it. He did it all. And then when I know that, that's where Miss Kuntz can stand up and say, I'm going toward it. I'm covered. I'm completely covered. There's my situation can't be improved. I can't be loved more. I am completely covered. I'm moving toward it. And reactively, she didn't run a risk analysis whether she goes and to deal with the disturbance at the front door, no matter how big she knew it was. She just ran toward it because her job is to protect children. And in glory. And the testimonies of how she's loved people, people who accidentally murdered somebody, how she's loved and walked through things with them, how she's raised people up. She had a habit of doing things. She had a habit of knowing her life wasn't earned, that it was paid for, given to her, and not by works. So she knew she was covered, so she just kept moving into it, the next thing that's in front of her, at her job. And is the standard different? At a Christian organization? Is the standard different for you, not the organization itself, but is the standard different for you in a nonprofit, for you at a Christian school, and for you in your workplace? Is it different for you, Christian? The standard's not different. The standard's not different. The standard's not different. This God who paid for everything then says something really confusing, Scott. What does he say? Okay, it's not about work. It's not about performance. I can't earn anything. It's all paid for. Now, move into work. Where did this day come from? Where did Monday come from? Allowed by God for His glory. That's not my counseling session. Don't send this tape to anybody. Don't send this video to anybody who's suffering. But we're not personally suffering in the way that they are. We're all suffering with them and for them and praying, and hopefully we will act. Hopefully we won't just leave it at a prayer level. Hopefully we will do things differently for this reason and see some of the root issues. But we're His handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works which He prepared before us in advance. Who's excited about the rest of their Friday? Excited? Yeah, it's headed. It's in good shape. TGIF. But who had something this week they've got on there? I'm just not excited about today.
Sure.
I don't want this one. I don't want this call. I don't want this situation. I don't want to have to deal with this thing. both completely prepared in advance for you to walk in. We got 22 years of history behind this one, but I mean, the towers fell and those firemen ran into it, prepared in advance to save people, to do good works. And so our work, every little thing, and they died in glory doing it. And that's what we're talking about. She died in glory. What better way? With the 200-year history behind that, that looks pretty good. It doesn't look good today. It's sad. A whole lot of people miss her and love her. But she's in glory. She's completely covered. She knows exactly where she was going. And it gave her a confidence to move into things. But in a 200-year history, what's it going to matter in eternity? That's a pretty good way to go. That's a pretty good way to go. Might have saved 2 people. Parents might have saved some suffering for others in the current. So everything we have in front of us, the work, the standard that somebody's not meeting, the standard that we're not meeting, and we're called in to move into it, and nobody's lowered it. There's some checks we should do about if it's a good standard or not. We'll get to that in a minute. But God has given us this day to move into it, the part we like about it and the part we don't. He's prepared it in advance. So then how should we work based on that? How does this inform this scenario, and what questions does it still leave? Let's cover them again so we wrap it well in the 19 minutes. How should we work based on being completely covered and that God prepared your work in advance? Most of you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Some of you might be moving in the next 6 months, 12 months, 4 years. But He has you right where He wants you today. How then should you work? Yeah. What did it cost Him? What? He, without sin, paid everything. And I said, I already deserve death and separation. I deserve worse than He got, and He got the worst. He got the worst because He'd never done anything wrong. It was totally unjustified in every way. And nobody took it, not willy-nilly. He laid it down to save you, Elisha, didn't He? To save you, Elizabeth. To save you, CJ. To save you, Henry. To save you. So yeah, and because He says, join me. And He did it, remember, He did it to make us one. He did it to bring you to Himself, to make you like Him. So it's not cheap, but also He's saying, come join me. Cost me everything, join me. I did it for you. So how does that inform work? One more way. That's a free salad point for sure. Where's the ego in this thing? Right? Where would their ego be if He did it all and He prepared today in advance and I'm supposed to just walk in and be faithful? Good. Really good. Really good. Where are we on reading? Michael, where are you? Here's how Paul says he did it. By the grace of God, I am what I am. His grace to me was not without effect. No. All that paid forness, all that covering, all the fact that I'm good forever, to live as Christ, to die as gain, I'd rather be with Him, he says. But so now, since that's the truth, while I'm here, I'm going to work harder than all of them. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. That sounds like, I'm going to be clear, not I, but the grace within me. That's what that dash means. No, wait a minute. It's the grace within me that's going to do it. The 2 types of grace at play here, how is this encouraging? How is this informative for the next 3 hours of this week? And next week as you go, the days you're excited about and the days that you're kind of like, uh-oh. The work you're dreading. How does it inform it?
That it's all God.
Yeah. It's taken away wanting to lower the standard. It's taken away saying, hey, we don't have to work so hard on this. Because He said, it's not cheap. He gave it all. The grace that was given to me. By the grace, I am not what I am. I'm only this. I was a religious guy, trying to hold everybody to a religious standard with no grace. God took that all away that I might know I'm His, that He paid for it, that I can't earn it, that I'm 100% His. He's got me 100% covered. And so, but for that reason, I'm working harder than anybody. And then, but you said, CJ, so wise, you said, some of you are saying that it raises the standard, also gives purpose and takes off pressure. I worked hard, and actually, you said that in a restful way. And we learned, 2 or 3 weeks ago, unless the Lord builds this house, we labor in vain. So hard work's no good. But hard work toward the right thing, we can actually rest, even if we're working one day 15 hours. But Paul's not saying I work myself to stress. This is not a stressful statement. We know it because we test the rest of his statements in Scripture with it. We know it because even if I had to stay up extra to help everybody see what it really was, then I know at the very least that he knows he's resting. Is my point. So sometimes I don't have physical rest. A couple of you about to have babies. One of you knows it. One of you doesn't. I don't know who that is. I'm teasing. But you have to have babies. And you're not going to get some rest tonight, but you're going to rest in your heart and mind and soul because you know you're doing the right thing raising that baby. You can remember the sleepless nights. You've forgotten them mostly. God takes those away. But you know you're doing the right thing when you stay up late at night with them, caring for them. You know you're doing the right thing when you're not resting because they're crying. You're making them cry. You're holding to a standard. Get back to sleep. Either way, whichever's love for that baby, you're going to figure it out, but you know you can rest in it when you're not sleeping. But then and the second part is that common grace, that God is not going to call you to anything. So there's a grace that he's paid for, he's moved into it, and then there's this common grace that Rob Carter did such a good job talking about a couple of years ago, that I know he gives me the grace to do the job. He's not going to put me in a situation that I don't have the common grace to handle. And the more I rely on, here's the beautiful part. You listen to Paul's words. If you listen to Kennan's word, I'll commend you highly to Kennan's 15 minutes from Sunday. Talk about weep, man. That's a pretty back-to-back day. He didn't want to be the sermon illustration. He had said that the mature saints move into suffering with a wisdom like, what's God doing here? How's God using this to shape my life? And 2 days later, he went through suffering that he couldn't think of or imagine. He's standing there saying it, but God's given him the grace to get through each day, to get through that situation. And he's standing there full of grace. He tries to make a joke about not being one of the sermon illustrations, but nobody can laugh because it's the most joyfully solemn moment I've seen. And so he's walking through it with the grace he's been given. He's so confident. And Kennan did not quote Paul this way because he lacked he wasn't trying to be Paul, but the way Paul talks in 1 Philippians, he's saying, I know I'm doing the right thing. I'd rather be with Christ. Kennan's saying, I now long toward heaven like never before. Here's a practical way it plays out. I long toward heaven like never before, but I'm so sure I'm doing work powered by the grace of God that I'm supposed to be here. That's what Paul's saying, but for your sake, I'm sticking around. And Kennan says on his videos, I know I'm here to become a better father. First, a better husband. He said vow order, beautiful. Better husband, first, better to God, better to spouse, better to his wife, better to his kids, and better to the church. I know what I've learned from this. I need to be better at work. Amazing. I'm not doing it justice. I'm just saying that moving into all of this by the grace of God, that God doesn't give you a moment He hadn't empowered you for, and He's testifying to it. So I'm just pointing it to one great example. We say that work and faith are separate. Here's what makes really clear, and whoever said ego, that's why you get the free salad, Michael. When you take away the quest for ego satisfaction, you make a person totally like a child, dependent on sovereign, omnipotent grace. Toil happens, industry happens, creativity happens, energy happens, the unleashing of dreams happens. Dallas Willard said it much simpler. When love is considered when we consider the will of God with love, possibilities open. Possibilities open when we're considering what love is. When I'm considering how does my job serve me so I can live a comfortable life, work has become means. The people that work for me have become means, and I'm trying to line it all up so I can have the life I want, which is nothing compared to the life that God's prepared for you. Nothing. So I take my ego out. I take my needs. Let's say last night at Gateway Tire. This can stay on the video. My sister told me, you're not going to believe when you go there. There's the world's best customer satisfaction person. You might should hire him. So, and I said, my sister said you're the world's best customer satisfaction person. She goes, well, I just figured I don't need to bring my problems to somebody needing some new tires. How about that? She went on further. The fact that I can or can't pay my rent has nothing to do with their needs with their car. So I'm going to smile and give them the best possible experience because that's what they came in here for. So she's going to love them. That's consistent with what Jesus is saying. That's consistent with this statement. I didn't go further with her faith in the moments that I had, but all truth is God's truth. And that's what she's saying. I take out my needs. I take out my need to look good at work. I take out my need to hit it. I can't hit it, but that doesn't mean I lower the satisfaction. It's still my aim. It's still what I'm trying to do, but it's the standard of how we love people. It's the reason the standards are that do this many policies per, because that's what's been proven that you can do. So if I'm treating people right, notice if I give more love and grace, I might take less turns at bat, but more sales. Because I understand and identify with them more. I love them better. I understand their needs better. I might be so good at that I learned that's what I'm supposed to need to do it a different way. So there's no way that I enter in the need to see what's best for them, best for the client, best for the boss, best for the coworker, and then see what creativity and energy when I quit separating my goals and even my faith. How do we make this practical? Put one more question into it to make it practical. Have we stirred up something that needs to be covered? Yeah. Yes. This means, that's great. This means, how do I hold standards high? The standards, by the way, this assumes they're validated. This assumes they're validated in a healthy way, not in a sweat factory down in some. You put the region on it. I won't even do that. This is the standard is a good standard. It's confirmed. Enough people have done it. Enough, for the free throw standards out there, I can't hit it. I'd be in the wrong business. So I got to move businesses. But assuming it's a right standard, and you're loving somebody toward that, including yourself, whatever person's in your mind right now about holding to a standard and then being generous and dispensing grace. How do we make that practical? And what's a? That's right. And so part of that, and so we have to go back. Why did the standard get raised? Was that in love? Is it just proven in math? Somebody can run we had a runner in here this morning. To be on a college team, you have to run a 4:30 mile. Okay, or at least a lot better, I think, actually. So if I can't be on that team. That's okay. I'm not a runner like that. I can't run a 4:30. So part of it, but be careful raising standards, because even standards that are raised in love and grace and mercy. If you're going to raise a standard on somebody, then I'm going to say, okay, all right.
You're saying raise it on yourself.
Yeah, even raise it on yourself. But be careful raising the standard on yourself, and raise it toward the things Jesus does. Raise it toward this grace and forgiveness, because what we're seeing is the highest ever holiness is love. Love done perfectly right is perfectly holy. They're separate attributes of God, but when they're done, when they're complete, they're the same. Holiness, perfect holiness is perfect love, and perfect love is holiness. And so that standard is there. So we really, really use it.
And whatever the standard of excellence is, if you do fall short, but you do raise the standard, you'll do better than you would have if you hadn't raised the standard.
Yeah, because you'll just get stale and it's all keep the same standard all the time.
And realize it's about people. I think U2 does a great job. I wrote a little bit about it. But he said, God makes all men geniuses, but most men don't like God's work. That person you're working with is a genius. They may or may not be in the right job, but they have a genius. Hamp proved that to us. We talked about have a son who's going to be born. He's not going to be able to walk he's not going to be able to walk. He's not going to be able to move below his waist. And he was the life of the party. He made the whole family better. There's no doubt about it. He had genius, and he's still blessing this city and blessing people all over the world with his testimony. So everybody has a genius. Everybody. We believe in the working genius here, and we need to know your geniuses in some of them, but you have different geniuses, all sorts of ways, not limited to those 6 things, although I think those are very helpful in your work. Everybody's made it. We can't look down on ourselves. Well, I'm just not that good, and we can't look down on somebody else. They might be in the wrong spot, but know it. And the edge, listen to this. It's always been a struggle. You've had to remember, we were kids that came out of punk rock. We weren't great musicians. Were you kidding me? We weren't great musicians. Our limitations were a strength. It was never easy, and I think that's a good thing. The edge is quoting Scripture. I don't know if he knows it. Our limitations were a strength, and that's never easy. I think that's a good thing. It's good that I can't hit the standard. Maybe I'm not supposed to do this thing. Or just the honesty of saying, if somebody who's terrible at returning or not tenacious with his text messages or calls and can really miss stuff, I've done that probably almost to all of you at some point. But it's still a standard, but I got to say, hey, I can start with humility. I'm sorry I missed that. I got to put some new systems in my life. To know it. He's quoting a verse, right? It's this verse. My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I'll boast all the more about my weakness. So he's boasting about, we were terrible musicians. We just worked really, really hard because we knew we'd been given a gift. If you hadn't seen the Christianity Today article on these guys, I really recommend it. It was right before at the end of the year. And if you hadn't seen the interview, if you can handle a few cuss words, it's at the bottom of the article this week, this 45-minute interview of them going through this. But their limitations are easy. And what they do? They split everything. They understand. You think one guy's worth more than another? How much business is ripped up over somebody being jealous over somebody else getting more? Or what does this person make, or what does that person make? They just split everything. I'm not saying that's the right solution for your business. I'm saying in some ways you got to realize you're all in it together. The team has to say, look, why are we so more gracious to the customer than we are the processor, the support staff? No, we need to hold this customer to a higher standard, and we need to hold and we need to be more gracious. We need to treat our employees like we treat our customers. We're all in it together. They split it all because that's kept them together. It kept them one to not have these competing agendas. So wipe out all. And again, I'm not saying every business should divide everything up equal. And surely NBA teams don't work that way for good or bad. But find a way to get everybody on the same page in the team or your family, whatever it is. What will bring us together? Because Jesus died to make us one with Him. And He says, in John 17, look it up as you're going over the Passion this week, the high priestly prayer, that if Father, as you and I are one, I pray that they would be one, and the ones that they tell us about, the ones that they tell about, they would be one, and that they'd be one with each other. So somehow, what the right thing to do emerges when I say, what is the right thing for this person to make them one? Even if they're not supposed to work here. I've noticed they can't hit the standard. They're doing their job. They're doing what they can do. They're coming into work. They're doing the right thing at the right time. But they don't have the gift of doing this job. So it's going to cost me a little bit, but I'm going to make this person whole, because this person's going to be with me in heaven, I sure hope. Desiring none should perish, I'm going to invest here to put this person on the right track in the next place. To put myself in the right track. I'm going to be a little easier on myself on the standard, because God paid to make me one with Him. So He didn't lower the standard. He raised it, and He paid for it. And then He says, in each scenario, is the standard useful in their life? Is doing this many units, or having this low of error rate, or coming in on time, or whatever the standard things are, giving my full effort at work, is it useful to me? Is it helpful to me? Absolutely is. And then I've got to dispense it with grace and mercy. Even I say, hey, you gotta be here at 6.